Okay, so we are talking with George and Alex. We spoke with them last week, and I had so many follow-up questions. We ran out of time on Zoom that I asked them if they wouldn't mind coming back and responding to a few of my follow-up questions. But one thing is, I guess somebody had made a comment in the YouTube for their original. Do you want to tell people what the comment was, Alex?
Yeah, sure. It was a comment on YouTube and it was basically saying like empath, like why don't you just call yourself codependent? Codependents don't have empathy. They're just trying to control people through self-sacrifice. And yeah, that kind of annoyed me because of yeah, something we discussed, like someone telling me what my experience is without knowing me and presuming they know best, which is always annoying. But actually, I was kind of glad they made the comment because it's an interesting misconception to clear up. Because there is typically this like idea that in a socio, non-socio, or socio-empath relationship, that the obviously the non-sociopathic one is really super codependent and the sociopath is like abusive in some way, or there's that kind of power dynamic going on, and I'm not saying that that never happens, like it definitely does, but it also happens when no one's a sociopath.
Right.
um, and I wanted to clear that up. I thought it was a really important thing that I could clear up because from my own personal experience, I know a lot about codependency, and I'm not sacrificing anything. And yeah, I feel that yeah, our relationship, like the way we've worked on things, you know, and we've had problems in the past and had to reset boundaries and stuff, but the boundaries that we've now set and the way it works are really respectful to both of us. And so basically there's nothing that I'm kind of yeah, sacrificing. And I particularly like laid out the boundaries and asked if they were comfortable for George too, keeping in mind his boundaries, which I kind of know they're more unsaid, but he definitely has his boundaries. And so we just found something that worked well for both of our boundaries. And yeah, because what we have is so good and we don't want it to end, we've both been really respectful about keeping those. So I just wanted, yeah, I thought that might just help clarify that that concept, you know, that misconception that it's always that way is completely wrong.
Yeah. So what can you give us an example of like a boundary that maybe you have, and maybe if it's different with George than it's been within past relationships, like do you have to have different boundaries with somebody who identifies as being sociopathic?
Yeah, and I don't know, it might depend on the person because, you know, all sociopathic people are different personalities and like we're all human. And but yeah, I discovered like from, and George, you can input at any time, but I actually printed out because I'd forgotten the actual boundaries that there were. And so they were like no hangouts and meals with like friends and family, um, no day trips, um, happy to go out and do meals as well as part of our meetups. Good if we alternate locations, so it's kind of equal. So sometimes he would come to me, sometimes I would go to him. Um, that we meet up like ballpark like 4 times a month. Um, yeah, because any less than that, it feels a bit stop start, and any more than that, it kind of just, when we were trying to do the typical boyfriend thing, it just kind of went wrong. So this kind of seems to work. And if we're also not working together or one for each other, although creative projects that are unpaid are possible. Um, and also that because yeah, our relationship is not monogamous, and George is polyamorous. So I am not poly, but I'm totally happy with non-monogamy. And so I basically said that I didn't want either of us to feel the need like that we needed to hide or disclose like other dating things unless there was a particular thing that was pertinent that was going to affect each other. um so I kind of put like absolutely cool, like to mention other people in those instances, but not to personalize them. And that was because of my like green issues, rather
Hmm.
than rather than the usual ways, because then I kind of felt stuff about them and I didn't like the feelings basically.
What do you
Uh,
mean by not personalize them? Like not give them a name or not, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Not give them a name, not feel like I, cause as soon as, because I guess I am an empath, and actually speaking to George, I think there are parts of being an empath which suck and are of no value. And actually I prefer the sociopathic way in some ways, and I think I'm actually changing some of those, like almost, but I can't help, it's like a feeling. If I know a lot about the person and I can understand that point of view, I can see what's going on, I can feel their feelings, and it feels horrible. So and also it feels like none of my business, so I don't want to even have those feelings.
You
So
know, and let's pause here because my understanding, I'm not that super good at guessing what normal people are going to think and feel about this, but some people watching this would probably be like, I would never allow my partner to do these things. But I think that's kind of the point of boundaries, and the fact that they're personal boundaries is, especially when we think about cultural expectations, and the kind of I was reading this book. It was about the history of law, and it said that the rise in divorce that happened basically in the 20th century was, yeah, it was due to like social changes and stuff, but it was primarily due to the fact that the whole idea of marriage changed. So before, marriage and any sort of kind of companionship that was similar to that was mostly based on, uniting property, and you're going to co-raise children, and these children are going to then take care of you when you're older. And so all of these kind of economic aspects of marriage. And the law professor who was giving the lecture said, what happened is that there was this idea of companionate marriage, or a companionate relationship, in which you don't just expect the other person to, like, share in the chores or share in the raising of children, but you also want to go out to eat with them. You also would like to have a conversation with them, right? So there was more of an expectation in marriage. And this is what caused so many divorces to happen, is because people were stuck in kind of these just economic marriages. And they thought, well, if there's more, then, I want this. But the idea of a relationship and marriage and all these different things, they have not been static. They have been super dynamic. And the fact that other people are willing to have different types of relationships shouldn't be a surprise to people. But I think actually normal people do sometimes struggle with that and think, because I wouldn't like that in a relationship, I cannot accept the fact that other people would like that in a relationship, would be okay with it for whatever reason. And they just automatically think that must be an unhealthy relationship, because it does not look like what I would expect a healthy relationship to look like. You guys have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking that actually it goes even further than that, because even the people who don't get divorced, quite often they don't stay faithful to each other throughout the whole of a marriage. In fact, when you do a straw poll and look around and see how many people are actually faithful, to one person in their life, you find it's incredibly small number.
Yeah.
When I look at people that I know, and but they'll all go on about this monogamy, and I'm just thinking, yeah, but you don't exactly practice it. Even like serial monogamy, there's people saying, I've had 3 wives and I've been faithful to all of them. I'm thinking that's just shit, mate, because you've got 2 of them you've left now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, I accept my position. I've tried being monogamous on a number of occasions. I was relatively successful when I was living with the mother of my children, and then after that stopped, I thought, do you know what, this doesn't work for me, I don't want to do it, and I'm just going to be upfront about it. And it coincided, interestingly, with the advent of internet and being able to speak to people on the internet and meet people through the internet. And then I found it was a very straightforward place to put forward your position, that you were not monogamous, and you can be straightforward about it. And if I'm honest, I thought that that would mean that I might never date again, you know, pretty much. But actually, that's not the case. And weirdly, and this is a very interesting thing I think about sexism, is that more women are comfortable with non-monogamy than men. And that's not what most people assume. It's that actually the patriarchy that has made women believe that they ought to be like that. But actually it's about men and men's egos and men wanting to control and own things.
Yeah, it is interesting because I have had two friends now, one female and one male. And the female, she was going to get ready to get married, and then all of a sudden her fiance kind of got like so pissed at like learning that she had like a few more sexual partners than she had previously disclosed. And he was just like, this is, you know, I don't know if I can marry you still. And I was like, how does this change anything about her? Like I couldn't understand it. And I don't think she was like hiding them, you know, like she wasn't, but
Yeah.
I think he was just like, that's three too many now. And then the guy, same thing. He loves the fact that his I guess girlfriend, kind of wife type person, was only married once before, you know, and is really religious. So loves that about her. And it's like, so I definitely can see what you're saying there, George, at least from my you know, experience with these people. So another question that I had after we spoke last time is, do you struggle with each other's personal boundaries at all? Are there some that are hard for you to keep?
Well, I would say one of the boundaries as well that I don't know if we completely agree on, like, is, for example, I'm kind of weird, I guess, in the sense that if George was to like stop really feeling it with me, and we've got different we're equally valid but different versions of love, I guess. And George has almost taught me to, in regard to him, to kind of match his sociopathic love as best I can, which I kind of managed to do, which is kind of awesome because it feels great. But it is different. But my thing is one of my things was, if for any reason, like he just kind of like stopped feeling it, I would I would ask as a personal favor that he would just tell me and just like end it, rather than like just kind of like keep it going. And George, I don't know how, I know that you like said that you would do that, but I don't know, that's one of the ones that I don't know how you felt about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is look, I've been in a lot more longer term relationships than Alex. And my sense is that some, you know, you can't always go in that fresh flood of love in the same way, and it doesn't mean something is over or finished or anything. It just means that it doesn't have quite the crazy place that Alex and I have been in for a good couple of years now. So you know, so my feeling is, I feel it's a shame if at that point it had to end, just because also I'm aware that that's like a sliding scale, and you can have a little slide away and then a slide back in either monogamy or non-monogamy. I don't think that's actually the main factor. I think you just the amount of crazy infatuation will fluctuate throughout the course of a relationship.
So here's kind of a question. Sometimes I have said that like sociopathic minded people are outcome oriented. And I think that's what makes them manipulative, is it's like, well, if I say X, then what's the result? And it's more like you're choosing results than you're choosing behaviors, right? Like, so rather than me choosing what I should say, I'm choosing the result. Like I want X result, so therefore I will say Y. So in this situation, George, you know a little bit or have a sense that if you told Alex, hey, my feelings for you have waned a little bit, they're not as strong as before, that might trigger in her a decision, or him or they might trigger a decision for Alex to be like, hey, I'm going to think about leaving the relationship or possibly leave the relationship. Does that to you, George, is that kind of like, are you like a little bit reluctant then to be completely honest with Alex? because you know that that will be that outcome, and maybe you don't necessarily want that outcome?
Well, blissfully at the moment, I don't feel remotely near that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to lie. I mean, it'll be a test if it gets to that point where that was the case, because
I kind of, sorry.
You know, it'll be difficult to qualify that to be what that moment is. But I think I'm hoping that you know, in some ways, the way that we've organised it with all the boundaries that Alex has clearly laid down. It's interesting because I don't feel any need to lay down boundaries, but apparently I have a lot of boundaries that everybody knows if they step over them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, oh, I've got this boundary. You know, it's just like, no, that's not acceptable. I'm not playing that game.
So
I kind of, sorry.
no, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say that I'm kind of also super aware that I've kind of asked as a personal favor that George would do that if his feelings did change. But I'm also aware of exactly what you said, Emmy, that just might not happen. So it was like, well, all I can do is ask. I don't necessarily expect that to happen, but because of my because of my empathy, like I'm also a little bit psychic like stuff, I think I would probably know anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. And I mean, if we look at the just dynamics of the relationship as it has been so far, is that, you know, I think Alex figuring that I was a sociopath quite early on and having a strange attraction to sociopaths, but realizing that they're dangerous. I mean, Alex is realizing that I'm a sociopath a long time without me having any sense of it, as we talked about last week. You know, I can feel like if the wind blows the wrong way, Alex is likely to be like, is this still going on? Okay, I'm not sure. It's not, we're not feeling it. I'm ready to go. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So the dynamics of that have been just more that way. You know, I've been feeling like this is just great. I mean, I love it. I mean, it's very interesting because Alex is such a unique person. It's the first time that I've, you know, had a relationship like this with a trans person, a non-binary person, or a male pronoun identifying person. You know, that's never happened to me before, and it's been kind of. So there's bits of me which just wasn't sure if that's because that's a different sort of sexual dynamic. It's not definitely just me being a male with a female. It's definitely not that dynamic. And
Sorry.
yeah, no,
interrupting everyone. Sorry, carry on, George.
No, I mean, so sometimes I don't know, but either way, the outcome has been that I feel that, you know, I've wondered at the times when it hasn't worked out. You know, it was difficult for me to fully understand what the problems were from Alex's point of view, and I thought it was all going swimmingly well, and it may well just keep going swimmingly well because we have all of these boundaries which stop it going into a lot of the places where things generally start to fall down. Because, you know, a lot of times I've been involved in relationships and you soon become aware of the escalator, you know, the relationship escalator moving from one place to another, you know, like you date a bit more, you see each other's parents, you start going on holiday together, you maybe move in together, you know, it's like a journey, and I don't have that with Alex, and I think that might be a saving part of it. But you know, like I'd like to say that I could just be straightforward about that, and I definitely wouldn't be not straightforward about it with Alex deliberately, but you know, it would be hard for me to necessarily know, okay, I've reached that moment when I should just say cheerio to Alex.
Yeah. All I would say is basically to George, like, I want you to be free. Like, I don't want you to ever feel a sense of obligation. I want everything we do to be for fun and for free. Like likewise, I don't want to mess with your autonomy. I don't want my autonomy messed with. I like the fact that we come together in a way that suits us both because we enjoy it, not because of any kind of like need or like pressure.
You know, and this actually reminds me, when people ask me for like relationship advice, they're like in a relationship with somebody who's sociopathic identifying, and they're kind of, you know, they want to make it work. You know, they're like Alex, they want to make it work. And I actually say that really strong boundaries are the most important thing. Like, because most people have unspoken expectations, and when those unspoken expectations aren't met, their feelings get hurt. You know, they start questioning some of the underlying goodness of the relationship, the good intentions, the desire to be with somebody, the fact that their feelings are reciprocated. You know, they start questioning that, and it can be poison to a relationship, when really the whole problem is just, in my mind, not having really firm expressed boundaries, like exactly like Alex did. You know, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here are the different things that are the, you know, my expectations of you. I'm a little bit interested, George. You say that or Alex, you know, whoever is better to answer this. You say you have boundaries, and it's just what people, man, what did you say? Things that are not acceptable. You're not playing that game. How do you know that those are boundaries? Is it maybe Alex is a little bit more aware of them than you actually are? And like,
Yeah,
what types of
I
things?
think you'd be better to ask Alex that, because, you know, like if somebody had asked me what mine were, I'd struggle to articulate them. But that's because I just don't feel a need. Because if you start stepping on my boundaries, then clearly I'm going to take some action. I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, because I was then thinking about like bullies, or if someone does something that steps on George's boundaries or something bad, say like in a bully type situation, because I know like we all hate bullies. Like, so I hate them too, but like the way we would respond is very, very different. So yeah, um, that might be an interesting thing to talk about in a sec. But the thing with the boundaries, yeah, I would say George's boundaries are like certainly in terms of relationships, it's like I will see who I want, and like no one can stop me. He doesn't want to live with anyone. He doesn't want a conventional relationship. He doesn't want anyone to tell him what to do. He doesn't want anyone to try and mess with his autonomy. He doesn't want anyone to yeah, I'd say those are the main ones with relationships. Yeah, and those are just pretty obvious. Um, and yeah, he kind of makes them very clear, like from the start. So, so yeah, I mean, they may not be on a list, but I'm very aware of them, and I'm kind of cool with that as well. Because if someone tried to do that to me, I mean, I was single for a long period of time, like for 12 years, mainly because I didn't want anyone to try and control me. Like the idea was just like hideous to me. I just thought, you know, that sounds like a nightmare. So
Yes.
in a way we suit each other really well, because I feel very safe with George. And weirdly, like I do seem to get on very well with like and feel at home with sociopathic people and also ENTPs. Um, but I don't feel any like danger or fear like George just said. It's more like I feel safe because I know that there are just some ways that people who are sociopathic seem to see things that are in line with how I see things. And also, I know that um, we're on the same page with that thing. So even if I was in a situation where someone wanted to control me, I would know how they feel about being controlled, and that would be a thing that I would feel kind of if I was able to express that, I would then feel very safe. But I feel very safe with George because I know that he would never want more from me than I am able to give, and that he would never, he's very respectful of, yeah, he would never put pressure on me to do all these things, because they're all things that he hates anyway.
Yes. So I think this would kind of surprise people to hear this, but it doesn't actually surprise me to hear this. I think that, sociopathic people, the reason why they're that way is because when they were little, there was some sort of neglect, but often there's some sort of, what should we say, like unauthorized authority being asserted over them, right? So I think they are highly sensitive to this idea of autonomy and being able to be their own actor and having their agency be a free agency. They can act and choose however they want to act and choose. I think that there's a big sensitivity to that, almost as if you had gotten a really bad sunburn and then you're very sensitive to the sun afterwards. So I'm not super surprised about the autonomy. And it sounds like, Alex, I don't mean to like read too much in, but it sounds like maybe you've had kind of bad relationships in the past where people have been sloppy about that. And they've kind of, here's your personal boundary, here's you, right? And they've crossed it. And you should never, ever, ever, ever cross into the area that's, it's like no trespassing. This is you, this is your identity. And there shouldn't be anyone crossing it. But I think actually in normal relationships, I don't know why, but I have noticed this too. Like when my friends complain, like I have a friend that complains and she says that she doesn't ever want to get married because she doesn't want her husband telling her what to do or how to spend her money. She doesn't want him saying how she should be spending her time or her money. And I was like, is this an unusual, thing to find somebody who would respect those boundaries? Who wouldn't, like, I get, that there are shared household chores and there's shared household expenses, but at a certain point, people are individuals. And just because they're in a relationship does not mean they stop being an individual. And I think that for some reason, with normal people, it's too bad we don't have our empath check-in person online today. But I think it's true, like with normal people, they have a hard time with that. They have a hard time recognizing that the person retains their autonomy. And if anything, I think they feel like the autonomy of the other person is a threat. And this is kind of an interesting thing, because when I'm in a relationship, but when I'm anything, when I'm in a job, when I'm in a particular home that I'm living in, every day I think to myself, I don't have to keep living here. I don't have to keep having this relationship. I don't have to keep doing this job. Every day I make a choice to stay in that relationship, job, home, whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think for some people that seems unsettling, the fact that I could just pick up and, drop whatever I'm doing just any given day. But for me, I find it to be so freeing. And the fact that I keep choosing that individual, keep choosing that job, keep choosing that home to live in should make people feel more secure, I think, because
Yeah,
I'm not just
Totally.
passively going along with it.
Totally. And that's why I think, yeah, exactly, because you're choosing it. It's not because you have to. And I feel the same way. I feel that I don't feel tied to like anything. And I love the fact that I never want George to feel tied to me. So I do really appreciate the fact we keep choosing each other.
yeah,
And I think that's awesome. I don't understand people who are like, well, I don't understand people who want someone to make them a promise. And it's like, what? Then you want them to only stay with you because they promised they would? Like, that sucks.
Exactly. In fact, I feel a little bit this way with manipulation. Like one of the reasons why I stopped manipulating is kind of this same idea. Like if I've manipulated somebody into being with me, or if I've manipulated someone into like working with me or whatever the situation, to cooperating with me somehow, like, is that really something that I want, especially for a personal relationship, an intimate relationship? I don't want that. I don't want, because it's fragile. It introduces an element of fragility into the situation. You think you're controlling, but you're not, because whenever you kind of force somebody to do something, there's something unnatural about it, right? It doesn't spring from a place of like organic within themselves, this is who they are and they feel comfortable in a relationship. There's something artificial, and that's the fragility, is that anything that's kind of artificial there, eventually there's going to be a rub. It's just like in your body when you get a splinter or something. Like it wants to come out. It doesn't want to just like hang out there and be nice. That's kind of the lesson that I've learned in life.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree, and actually, you know, specifically in the context of relationships and in the idea of being poly, and coming out about that to your parents and your family and extended friends, is there's a sense that you don't, you know, you're under a lot of scrutiny about that, and you know, one of the most important things that's important to me is that not only am I not doing that, but I'm seen to be not doing that. You know, I just don't want to be controlling someone. I want everybody to be doing it because they want to do it. If they don't want to do it, then they shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I see that Paula's come in, and Paula had a question last time, and it was, I think it's Hare or Cleckley said that sociopathic-minded individuals, they tend to have like a youthfulness, a youthful appearance, kind of a youthful vibe about them. And do you, either Alex or George, agree or disagree with that?
I'll let Alex answer that question. Do I look youthful, Alex?
Totally, totally.
I mean, I am. Yeah, I'm about 14 or 15 years older than Alex.
That you've got this like youthfulness, and also like a kind of mixture of like an innocence, and it's hard to describe, and completely the opposite as well. It's like hard to describe, but it's very like yeah, adorable.
There's one thing that you said just now, Emmy, and I was thinking about, you know, how things in childhood and where some of those things come from, and it was quite clear the way you described it in your book, and there was quite a lot of things that were going on in your family life that could help one go down that route. I can see that. The interesting thing for me was I didn't really have that with my family, but I had it as soon as I went to institutions. I hated institutions. I really, really did. And I was fine when I was at home, and I just hated being in institutions. School was really a terrible place for me. And that's when I think I really started to develop a lot of things to cope with that. And that turned, really changed my personality enormously.
So you said something earlier, George, that this is your first time being in a relationship with somebody who identifies as being non-binary or even kind of male. And then you've said a little bit about like you've come out to your family, it sounds like, about being polyamorous.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a little bit of a mix here. Number one, I've said before, that for a psychopath, for a sociopathic minded individual, your kind of sense of self is a little bit flexible, and you don't necessarily put as much weight in labels like male, female, and it might express itself like in being a little bit more either gender fluid or like sexually fluid in terms of like you're not super straight.
No, I'm not super straight. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. And then the kind of flip side though is when you start identifying with these kind of labels, you know, how does that make you feel then to be like, okay, people have a label for this and it's polyamorous, and so I'm going to tell them they're polyamorous. Do you identify with that label?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's difficult because people take different understandings of polyamorous. I mean, my feeling about polyamorous or, you know, non-monogamous is anybody who has sex with more than one person. So I think that a lot of people are just not labeling themselves correctly.
I would disagree. I would say that non-monogamy is different from polyamory.
Yeah.
I would say that polyamory is having multiple relationships, whereas non-monogamy is just that it's like an open relationship and you just have sex with other people.
Yeah, for me, everything is a relationship. It's just a question of how deep and meaningful it is.
That's funny that you say that, George, because first of all, my own boo, who was on last week, Arya, you know, said that she thinks that you are the most similar in some ways to all the different psychopaths that we've met, you know, traveling around the world. And that is something she has a hard time with me, is that I'm like, you know, there's these distinctions, friend, you know, intimate, you know, to me, they're really blended. There's not a clear line dividing them at all. And that's something that sometimes, frustrates her.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of family members I don't want to have sex with, but you know, that's that.
Exactly.
But beyond that, then a lot of things are possible.
Yeah, I also like, I don't have like, I don't identify really with any like sexuality or like anything like yeah, so I think I kind of have that in common um with sociopathic people. Yeah, because I don't really have a sense of like gender. I'm kind of really fluid, and who I'm attracted to is like nothing to do with like gender or anything like that.
So here,
I
oh, go
think
ahead.
one of the things, just very quickly to clear up though, is because of the polyamory stuff, and particularly to do with the non-binary, trans or gay or bi or any of those things. I mean, I think there's a big lot of things to give up, which I don't think is necessarily sociopathically related. But if you've got a lot of white male privilege, you know, like however much you might not think that's a good thing, you still don't necessarily want to give it up, you know. And as soon as you start talking about, you know, having kind of certain kind of relationships, you know, that's really affecting how people think about you in quite a big way. So, which is why I probably didn't come clean about a lot of that stuff until I was quite old.
Hmm. You know, that's interesting because so this is a little bit directed to George, but also Alex. This idea then of like self-identifying as being psychopathic is a little bit similar, I think, right? Because, you know, here I am, for instance, law professor, whatever. I have like pretty good like CV, you know, like I could get plenty of jobs, really high paying, great jobs or something. And then kind of coming out as being psychopathic was just kind of like giving a lot of that up. You know, I wasn't
Yeah.
white male, but I was white and I was really highly educated, you know, so I had those things kind of going for me. And
Yeah.
so the question that Arya had is, she said, does George feel like he should be believed in identifying as a sociopath? He said that people wouldn't believe him. Has he told anyone? If someone has refused to believe him, has it bothered him that they're rejecting this thing that seems relevant to him?
Yeah, it's not relevant to me in any way other than I can understand it's helpful to me
Mhm.
because Alex has helped me understand why it's helpful to know why people react in ways that they do. But I've no interest in identifying as a sociopath or a psychopath to the wider public. That's why I'm not showing you my face right now.
Exactly.
I think it's just because you can see there's no benefit, whereas there is a benefit in kind of knowing it for yourself. Because, like I said, then it's like, oh, I can explain to you why. Because I said to George a lot, like, do you ever find, before I asked him the question, I was kind of trying to feel it out. And, like, I said to him, do you ever find that people have really weird emotional reactions to things and you have no idea why? And he was like, yeah, the whole time.
Mhm.
um, and so I was like, well, one of the benefits is I can kind of explain to you, like, I can kind of explain to you stuff like that, and it might be useful. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also explain stuff. I don't know, that's very like different. Like we respond. Yeah, although we've got lots of things in common, and it's interesting because I've been diagnosed with CPTSD, so I have trauma like from my childhood, and I think it depends on maybe genetics or whatever. But I think it can like affect people, and people can go different ways with it. And
Yeah.
so maybe that's why I feel some kind of kinship as well with sociopaths, because it's kind